Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best move for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan and Game Week 11 is almost over, which means we can finally start looking for, hopefully, a slightly better Game Week 12. So let's start that off with a tier list video for you guys today. We're going to rank these players and hopefully you enjoy it. If you do, drop a like, do subscribe if you're new around here. Let's get cracking. Okay, so we've got the 30 most popular transfers in at time of recording for Game Week 12. We're going to rank them on this tier list depending on how good I think they are as transfers, and we'll just go through it and see what you guys think. So let's start off with a pretty boring one, to be honest, and it's going to be Bulldog. Bulldog is only 3.8 million, so he's a nice cheap player. If you're on a wild card or something like that and you just need a cheap defender for your bench, Bulldog is absolutely fine for that purpose. So I'm going to put him in the optional category. He's back fit and available now, which is pretty good. So you've got a really cheap defender there if you need to save some budget somehow, downgrade a defender, you know, free up some money. Next up, He-Chan. I think he is also an option. I think maybe last game week was probably the time to buy him ahead of that Sheffield United fixture, but there are still a couple of good fixtures coming up from him, and he's nice and cheap. So again, an optional player for you. And we're going to keep the trend going on the optionals with Archer. Yes, Archer obviously scored a wonder goal in game week 11, but is that going to happen every game week? Probably not, but he's a decent bench option. You can come in and play and cover very occasionally, but you have to kind of ask yourself, how often would you actually be playing a player like Archer? Is it actually worth just going for a 4.3 million forward anyway, if you're just going to put them on the bench every single game week? I think that question needs to be asked before you go for Archer. You're not going to score a goal every game week. We've got Lascelles next, so we're actually going to drop in the good transfer category. He is 4 million. So that is a really good price. We know that, unfortunately, Botman, he may not return from injury for quite some time now, so it might be a really nice, cheap way of getting involved in the Newcastle defence. Obviously did very well, scoring well against Arsenal in Game Week 11, so can he continue that in some slightly nicer fixtures? Well, I don't see why not. So yeah, really, really good bargain player to have right now whilst Botman is out. Next up, Karu Mitoma, and the fixtures are about to get worse. We've got Sheffield United up next, but I think after that, the great fixtures that we kind of saw Brighton had, I think they are running out. Even the likes of Everton don't really consider that a good fixture anymore. They're keeping things defensively fairly tight. So therefore, is Mitoma a good transfer at this point? I think you may have, you're beginning to have missed the boat if you haven't got him already. And there are some other 6.5-ish midfielders that I prefer at this point. So I'm going to shove him in the optional category. He still should be a pretty good pick, but I am concerned about whether there's some better options, and there is one player I want to talk about who I do really like at the moment as a bit of a differential, and that is Kudus. Now we're seeing Kudus is now playing far more than before. You know, he's got the back-to-back starts for a West Ham. I think he should continue to start. He's doing really well. He is looking dangerous. He's looking like a really talented footballer that I know a lot of people thought he would be when he came to the Premier League. So very positive signs coming from a very good West Ham attack. And Kudus is the latest part of that jigsaw puzzle, I guess. So good fixtures coming up. I really like this pick. If I had to choose whether I'm going to transfer in Mitoma for 6.5 or Kudus at 6.5, I'm going for Kudus right now. I'm going to tell you, I'm going for Kudus. Right, next up, Van de Ven. This is an interesting one. I like the fixture against Wolves next. I really, really do. But after that, again, we're looking long-term. The fixtures don't look so great if you are a defender playing against some pretty tough attacks. So therefore, do we drop him in the optional category? I think we do. Spurs have been pretty decent in terms of getting clean sheets, to be fair, but I do worry a little bit about the fixtures. When we're looking at defenders, we often target the fixtures before we target the player and the form of the player themselves, I guess. Ferguson up next. We're going to put him in a similar situation to Mitoma. I like that he's a nice cheap forward, though. I know a lot of people are looking for cheap forwards right now, but would I go for him? Would I take the punt for this next fixture? I would certainly think about it. But you're always wondering with Ferguson, is he going to be starting? Is João Pedro going to come in and play as the striker instead? I'm not exactly sure. It's a difficult one. So you are taking a risk if you do go for a player like Ferguson, but there's definitely potential there. So I'm going to put him in the optional category. Finally, we need to put our first player in the avoid category, and that is actually going to be Bruno Fernandes. I know a lot of people are thinking, well, he did okay last game week and he's about to play Luton Town, but we have seen against Liverpool that Luton Town don't always concede goals, do they? And I just think in the long term, you know, you look at the next several fixtures for for Manchester United. After this Luton Town game, the fixtures get a lot worse. And Man United are in such a bad spot right now. I think it's really, really difficult to pick up their players. I think Fernandes, at best, works as a one-game week pump. But at 8.3 million, would I be willing to sacrifice a lot of the players that people would be sacrificing for Fernandes? And that's players like Maddison and Saka. Would I sell those guys for Fernandes? Does Fernandes fit in our teams right now? To me, the answer is no. I would prefer the other guys, not just for this game week, but for beyond that as well, particularly with the bad fixtures coming up. Romero, I'm going to put next to Van de Ven. He's doing pretty well for bonus points at the moment, so I think there's definitely potential there. I think he could score well against Wolves, but again, looking longer term, not hugely keen on the Spurs defense. They're okay, but I don't love them, if that makes sense. I don't want to love a player I'm bringing into my FPL team. Next up, Douglas Luiz. I think he is either optional or avoid. I think the fact that he is a penalty taker does help, but I put Fernandes in the avoid category, and he's also a penalty taker. I just still think the Aston Villa fixtures, you know, we've kind of got one good one left next week. We've got Bournemouth in a couple of weeks, but around that and outside of that, the fixtures are starting to get worse for Aston Villa, so you may have missed the boat on Douglas Luiz, and his open play numbers are still really, really poor, so you really are depending on penalties. If that's what you want, then fair enough, but for me, I would not be going for that one. I don't think. I think it's a little bit too late for a player like Douglas Luiz, to be honest, but at least he's cheap. But I just think there's, you know, when we're looking at other cheap midfielders to go for, Douglas Luiz does not really make my top selections on that one, so going to have to put him in the avoid category. Someone's got to go in the void, right? So, yeah, Douglas Luiz and Fernandes, two penalty takers, they're going in there. But, hey, you never know. They could get a lucky penalty. It happens. So, yeah, they could turn out to be okay occasionally. But, moving on to Ben White. I think his price tag at 5.7 million is what puts him in the optional category, because I do actually really like the Arsenal defence moving forward. I would be looking to go for players like Saliba and Gabriel as well. But 5.7 million, is he going to provide a value for money at that price? I don't think so. I think he can get something slightly cheaper and get a similar amount of points output there. So he's going to go in optional because I do like the Arsenal defence, but I think there are other ways of getting good scores from defenders without having to spend that much money. And I think budget is beginning to get a little bit tighter with everyone wanting to have the likes of Salah, Haaland, you know, Saka, Trippier, Son. You know, where is the money going to come from in order to get White? Who are you going to have to sacrifice to get White? And is it worth it? The answer, maybe no in a lot of occasions, so works for some people, won't work for a lot of other people. Johnston's still my favourite goalkeeper to go for, so I'm going to put him in the good transfer category. Very, very nice indeed. And we've got Saliba next, the player we just mentioned. Going to pop him up into the good transfer category as well, because I do like the Arsenal defence, and I would be more willing to go for Saliba at 5.2 million than I would Ben White. I could even arguably put him in a great transfer, but I'm not going to do that because, again, it's the 5.2 million. You know, Gabriel at 4.8, I think I prefer just for that slightly cheaper price there, because we really are just looking for clean sheet points. You're not going to get any attacking returns from Saliba. You may be fortunate enough to get some bonus points, at least with Saliba, so he goes in good transfer. He's still a good player to go for right now. Yeah, I still feel like I slightly prefer Gabriel. Slightly. And next up, Mbeumo. Despite the bad fixtures, I think the form is good enough that I think he goes in the good transfer category. So, again, we spoke about Kalidou Mitoma and whether we would go for a player like him. The reason why he is down in optional isn't because he's a bad player as an individual, but it's because we look at these other options. We look at Mbeumo, we look at Kudus. I like these players more, so I'm going to go for these ahead of him if you're looking for that 6.5 million man right now. And honestly, I would be, after this game week, I would even be tempted to switch Mitoma out and replace him with an Mbeumo, with a Kudus, to be honest. So for that reason, there you go there. Next up, Maddison, which is a really difficult one because he's like a player that ticks along so nicely. But he's 8.1 million. He's a player a lot of people want to sacrifice for the likes of Saka, for example. I don't know if I'm confident about that move anymore. Like, Maddison is doing pretty well, and I'm really curious to see how he's going to perform against Chelsea tonight. I think, you know, if he gets an attacking return against Chelsea, and I think he very well might do, then he might even come into the conversation of players to buy. You know, forget players to sell. He might be a player to buy. And Wolves up next. I think the fixtures from an attacking point of view are slightly better for Spurs than they are from a defensive point of view. So I'm happy to put Maddison in the good transfer category. So I'm going to put him up alongside here, depending on how he plays tonight. Could even move up a little bit more, to be honest. Anderson next. 5 million defender, good, you know, opportunities to get attacking returns from those set pieces with his heading ability. So I think he goes in good transfer. We've still got 4 game weeks of good fixtures for Crystal Palace, but a warning, after the next 4 game weeks, the fixtures do get worse for Crystal Palace. So, yeah, just a warning to you guys, if you are going for a Crystal Palace defender, you kind of want to get a move on. Get that done sooner rather than later. Next up, Gordon. Really like him for his price. Really like him for his price. He's going to go up here with the likes of Mbeumo and Kudus. A little bit cheaper, but I think provides a really decent value for money there. So he's going to go up in the good transfer category as well, which we are overloading. I want to get some great transfers in pretty soon. And are we going to do it with Tyrick Mitchell? I'm afraid probably not. I think, you know, he is nice and cheap, and I do like that he's a nice cheap way of getting into the Crystal Palace defence. But I think it's because long-term Mitchell is not an insane pick. He's a nice player for now. I don't think he's going to get, you know, goals every single game week. It's not really what his game's about. He's never been a particularly attacking fullback. But 4.5 million is obviously a really, really nice price. So he drops into good transfer category. And finally, we are going to start filling up some of the higher categories, starting off with Trippier. Trippier, great transfer. Great transfer for me. Yeah, a player that I would really want if I didn't have him already. I know we've been let down by a lot of players in Game Week 11. Trippier was one player that did not let us down. And it's just proving how consistent he is, how good Newcastle are right now. The clean sheet possibilities are always there no matter who they play. And the bonus points are always going to come Trippier's way, whether he gets those FPL returns or not. So he's a great transfer. The fixtures start to get a little bit better after that Arsenal game is now out the way. So, yeah, I'm feeling Trippier as a super long-term hold, a player you can bring into your FPL team and just hold for months and months and months. As long as he doesn't get injured, he's going to be a great transfer for the long term. And Saka, I would probably say, is a similar situation. Saka's not been quite showing the same form as Trippier, but the fixtures are amazing. We've got Burnley up next. That's obviously a great fixture for Arsenal. And I do think that you are probably going to be tempted to go in on some Arsenal attackers. I think that is something that is on all of our minds right now. So, Saka, definitely one of the star attackers from this Arsenal team. Can he get back to form, get back to business in these much easier fixtures? I don't see why not. So, great transfer for me. Alvarez up next. I mean, I don't really know why you would want to bring in a Man City attacker ahead of Chelsea. It's a kind of a tricky game, and I'm always worried about Alvarez's rotation, but we do know he's a top player. But his form is dropping off a little bit. It has to be said. Rotation is looming, and the fixtures over the next 4 aren't great for Man City. So, in general, would I be going for him right now? Probably not. He's an okay player to have if you already have him in your team. Don't mind him. Pretty decent price still at 7.2 million, but doesn't thrill me. Doesn't thrill me. So therefore, optional again. And Darwin Nunez, I think because of the next 2 fixtures are kind of tough, I feel like he needs to go around the same area as well. But Darwin is definitely an exciting player. Really, really disappointing result against Luton. Like, he looked so good in that game, like, in terms of getting in the right positions and, you know, being that star attacking man for Liverpool, even more so than Salah by quite some distance, actually. But he just couldn't finish his chances. So, can he get back to business and looking really good and finishing his chances and converting on his XG? I don't know. I don't know. The next 2 fixtures are probably an opportunity for you to wait and see. We've got Man City coming up in a couple of weeks as well. So maybe we wait until after the Man City game has passed. We've got international break as well. That always spells rotation for Darwin as well when those international breaks come around. So in general, I think he's a player that you might want to hold off on for a couple of weeks. Salah, you know, despite the fact he never really looks that good when you watch him play, he's just got a knack of getting FPL points. And I still think he is a star player that you guys want to be owning in your FPL team. And if you don't own him, you're going to be playing with fear. On the counter-attack, he's obviously very, very good. And that's going to favour him in some of the more difficult fixtures. He's on penalties. And, you know, he's just a player who just has a knack of getting FPL points. So it's difficult to put him any less than a great transfer right now. Do I think he's essential, though? No. Would he be my priority transfer in this week if I didn't have him already? Probably not. There's a couple other players I do prefer. But Salah, still a great transfer. Still a player that you're going to want to have in and around your team right now. Now, next up, we need to talk about Callum Wilson. I do like the next fixture for Newcastle. After that, the fixtures do get a bit more difficult. Wilson's rotation is going to happen when Isak is back. But when Isak is out and Wilson is available, you've got to back Wilson on penalties as well. I'm going to put him in the good transfer category. Even if he is a short-term punt, you know, the points potential is endless with this guy. I really, really rate Wilson so much in FPL, but he has to be getting minutes, first of all. Thankfully, we have a small guarantee of that at the moment, but we need to move on to our next player, and that's going to be a player, and I think it's going to be the first player of this video that I'm actually comfortable putting in the must-buy category, and that's going to be Heung-min Son. Now, Heung-min Son, to me, is the captain option of choice at this exact moment. I would be looking to captain Son potentially against Wolves. Maybe because there's a lack of better options. You've got Haaland kind of playing against Chelsea. You've got Salah playing against Brentford. Where do you go from there? Do you go for a Saka? He's a little bit out of form, whereas Son showing amazing form right now, very consistent, and I think he has the best fixture of all of the kind of big premium assets in FPL right now. So yeah, Son's form, Son's fixtures, I would really be worried if I didn't have him in my FPL team right now. I think he's kind of arguably a priority transfer at this point. He goes in the must-buy category. Next up, I think we need to start moving things around a little bit, because I'm looking at this tier list and I'm sitting on the fence on a lot of these picks. I'm putting too many players in the middle. I think we need to move things around. So we're going to shove Saliba up one category into the great transfer category. And I'm not really comfortable moving anyone down from optional right now. So I'm not going to do that. But yeah, I do worry I'm sitting on the fence a little bit on some of these picks. But yeah, it's just how I feel, I guess. But we've got to put in Ollie Watkins next. I'm going to put him in good transfer, no better. He's a fine player to own. I don't know if I would necessarily buy him, but, you know, the form is dropping off a little bit for Watkins, it kind of feels like. But you never know when he's going to start exploding again, and he's been super consistent over the last year in general. So I don't want to judge him too quick just based on a couple of blanks, because I think he has looked dangerous in moments as well. Got Fulham up next. It's a good fixture, so I still think he's worthwhile having a think about. But we've got a few more players that we're going to lift into some higher categories. And first of all, Jared Bowen. Really like this pick. Really like this pick, Jared Bowen. Like, if you can afford him, I know he's like a difficult price point, because a lot of people kind of have 8 million-ish midfielders, or they have 6.5 million-ish midfielders, and no one's really got players in the 7 million range. But if you do have a player in the 7 million range that you are not comfortable with keeping, Bowen, I would not even hesitate with making these transfers. The fixtures are great for West Ham. West Ham are in great attacking form. Bowen is the star man in this team, looking good every single game. So, yeah, love Bowen. Really like him as a pick. And, yeah, he's going to be difficult to get in. I know a lot of people will be maybe looking to sell the likes of Maddison for him. Not sure I would go that far, to be honest. But, yeah, he's certainly a great transfer. I know a lot of these players, like Saka and Bowen, it's like, who do you sell for to get these guys? Like, I want these players, but how do I get them? Who do I sacrifice? Who can I sell? That is going to be a really difficult question this week. And I think a lot of people are going to default to Maddison as the player to sell. I am not sure I can agree with that one. I guess let's wait and see about the Chelsea game, and we'll have another discussion, particularly in the stream we do tonight after the game. We'll have a discussion about whether we should be selling Maddison or not, because he's just that player you're always tempted to sell, but you can't really justify it in many ways. So yeah, make sure you join the stream after the final game of this game week, and we'll have a little chat about that one. But there's two more players to add into this tier list, and first of all, now we've got the Newcastle game out of the way, and it was very clear. I said I don't like this player to buy in Game Week 11. I didn't like that Newcastle fixture. I thought it would be a low-scoring game. Lo and behold, it was a low-scoring game, and this player blanked. But that fixture is now out the way, and this player has a great fixture next. Of course, I'm talking about Nketiah against Burnley. I think there's some real high potential here, and because we don't know the Gabriel Jesus situation, I don't know how long we're going to have Nketiah for. But whilst we do have him available, you know, playing the hand that's in front of you, playing the cards that you're dealt, kind of like this pick. I really kind of do like this pick, but you just have to make sure you have an exit strategy. I think he is a great transfer as long as you have a plan in place of who you're going to move to next. Are you going to need to downgrade another area of your team in order to upgrade Nketiah to someone else? That is going to be something that's going to be the case for a lot of people, right? It's difficult to pick forwards right now, though, and Nketiah is kind of standing out to me. In terms of forwards, he ranks pretty high right now in terms of players I'd want for Game Week 12. I think he'll be one of the highest scoring forwards of Game Week 12, so why not? And finally, we've got one more player left, the 30th player on this tier list, and the #1 most popular player of time of recording. He scored very well in game week 11. He scored more points than a lot of people's entire teams, which is really saying something. I am, of course, talking about Jeremy Doku. Wow, what a performance, hitting the gritty, getting all those FPL points. Absolutely insane performance against Bournemouth, but is he a must-buy? No. He's an avoid. He's an avoid. I'm sorry. Look, was anyone thinking about buying Doku before the Bournemouth game? Be honest. Was there any point where you were considering buying Doku ahead of Bournemouth? The answer is probably no. And that is ahead of one of the best fixtures Man City will have this entire season. And people weren't thinking about buying Doku. What were the reasons for that? Well, because, first of all, we know he's super rotation risk. We've got so many wingers now available at Man City. And you never know which combination it's going to play. Doku's probably going to play for the rest of the season. You know, probably starts 50% of the games for the rest of the season. Can you really count on him playing where it counts, playing in those good fixtures that you really want to have him for? Well, it doesn't even matter because the next fixtures for Man City aren't great. The next fixture is against Chelsea. Chelsea have been one of the top performing defences in the entire Premier League this season. They really are not letting many chances come their way. So, you're counting on Chelsea conceding goals, which I don't think is a guarantee. They're certainly not going to concede a lot of goals. 2, you are counting on Doku starting, and even if you get a start this game week, doesn't mean you're going to get one the following game week. And I think you're going to get a lot of one-pointers from Doku at a price point where there are so many players that are nailed, in super good form, have been consistent, getting FPL points very, very regularly, and therefore, and have better fixtures as well. So, what is the reason we're going for Doku? Well, it's a knee-jerk. Let's be totally honest with ourselves. We saw the big score last week. We're panicking because Game Week 11, let's be honest, sucked. Game Week 11 sucked. Like, it's a bad game week, right? And it drives people into making very, very extreme decisions, often based on very short-term thinking and not really taking the whole picture into consideration. So, Doku, I know a lot of you guys are going to be wanting to buy him. I know a lot of you guys have probably bought him already. But let's be real here. Is Doku actually a good pick? And if he is, why is he a good pick now when he wasn't a good week ahead of Game Week 11, before Game Week 11? Let's have a talk about that within the chat. Doku buyers, people who are considering buying Doku, tell me why you are doing that. I want to hear it. And those of you guys thinking about not buying Doku, I want to hear your side of the story as well. Why do you think that Doku is not a good pick? I've kind of given my reasoning. Have you got anything to add to that? Would love to hear from you because it's always very, very interesting when the #1 transfer of a game week actually, in many ways, might not be everything that they're hyped up to be. It's always very interesting. It's always an interesting way to see if a lot of the knee-jerk kind of managers will get caught out by something like this. So, Bournemouth, obviously a great opportunity for any player to get points when they start ahead of that. Bad fixtures, I don't know, not keen on that one. So, he goes in the avoid category. So, that is it, guys. That is the tier list. Hopefully, we've got things reasonably right here. Again, I am sorry for sitting on the fence on a lot of players, but I don't think there's too many avoids this game week. I think there's a lot of okay players, but less excitingly, there's not that many players that are really standing out to me. But certainly Son, Trippier, Saka, Bowen, Salah, Saliba, and Nketiah, these kind of players would be top of my wish list for Game Week 12. And players like Mbumo, Kudus, Gordon, those kind of players would also be players I'd definitely consider if I wanted to go a little bit different to that as well. So there you go. There is the tier list. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy, make sure you drop a like and do subscribe if you are new around here as well. Don't forget to check out the stream. We are streaming after the Chelsea versus Spurs game this evening. And, you know, even if you're watching this a little bit later, you can always watch the stream replay as well. We talk about all kinds of stuff, go into a lot of depth and answer some questions that are plaguing all of us ahead of Game Week 12 as well. So looking forward to that. Make sure you check out Fantasy Football Hub, link in the description. We did another video yesterday for Game Week 12. If you want to check that out, the link is there. We have a look at the best team, the best kind of players you might be thinking about. But aside from that, thank you so much for watching once again, and I will see you later, mates.